Welcome back to Beyond the Rings, Paris 24 Outreach, 30 short stories in 30 days. I'm Jeff Wells, founder of Beyond the Rings. And once again, pleasure to join us today is my friend Josh Reed, Triple Play podcast. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's really good stuff. It really is. And he also has the privilege of being my unpaid podcast producer, as I tell people. And but you have been a great gift to me and to Beyond the Rings, and so thank you so much, Josh. It's great to have you with us again today.
Well, it is awesome to be here. And so we spent the last couple episodes and we got into preparation. That was really kind of the deal. We hit the idea of the spiritual, the physical, and the mental aspect of both you, your family, the ministry. I want to pivot and I want to ask you a question, and it's something that's been in the back of my mind. When you think of Paris, comparing it to maybe other summer Olympics, let's say like like a Sydney, your very
Hmm.
first one. How would you say the Olympics has evolved in the sense of style, imagination, games?
Hmm.
Like I was thinking about Paris. Their opening ceremony wasn't necessarily in a area; it was down the river, so
Yeah,
it was kind of a different experience there. And then you've got like the sand volleyball was literally in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like these are unique things, and when I think of like Sydney, Sydney was all in that big,
Huge park. Yep,
yeah,
Olympic Park.
park there.
Yeah.
So, my question was how would you compare some of that? I mean, was in your mind as you were going around sharing the gospel, was it easier in Paris or maybe easier in Sydney because it was Sydney was all there and you're in the
Yeah,
park, or was it harder maybe in Paris because you had to go from one location to the other and it was much more spread
yeah,
out? So,
yeah. Great question. It very much was different. It has progressed, and I think for the most part, I will answer it from two different ways because I dealt with this a lot when I was there. On the one hand, I understand the push coming into Paris for it to be more sustainable. That's the buzzword that is used. We want to be more sustainable, meaning they don't want to allocate resources that are never used again, and that's largely due to being good stewards and with the environment and the impact and all that, as well as culturally, because every Olympics impacts a part of the city, and you take a cultural icon city like Paris, it has a lot of old, rich history. You don't want to just go banging around and knocking buildings down, right? And so, for example, in London, they took a part of town that had been pretty much since World War II. I learned this in Paris from some Londoners that the area of London that they targeted to put the Olympic Park was it was an area in need of revitalization. It had really gotten pretty crime ridden and very dilapidated. And so when they went in there and tore down a bunch of housing and built the Olympic um, Park and the Olympic Village for the athletes, it still caused some upheaval and some unrest and some, displacement. But I was so thankful I ran into this family from London, and they are now living in an apartment that used to be the Olympic Village for the athletes. So it's been a model that has been sustainable. The stadium and all the other venues have been repurposed and used for ongoing Olympic activities. That is the exception for most of the Olympic histories. Most Olympic venues are long abandoned and unused within years, and so you've got billions of dollars impacting s- huge parts of the cities and so forth. Um, in a very wasteful way. So the idea of being sustainable is a great goal. I like how that was lived out in Paris because, like you said, you have the beach volleyball venue right there in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. It's incredible scenery. Just up the way on the other side of the Eiffel Tower, they had this huge um, stadium, and it was a temporary stadium, temporary seating. It seat, I think it was 13,000 people, and that's where they had um, the Parc de Champions celebration every night. And it was free. You didn't have to take it. You just had to get in. You got there while there was plenty of room. You go in and uh, um, and you can watch evening. celebrations, and there'd be people dancing in the aisles, and there'd be some kind of dance routine on the stage, and it was more like a catwalk and a platform, and that way the athletes would come out and they'd high five and get pictures with the fans walking back, and it's just a neat experience. But that was also in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, and so. And then you had like Olympic rings outside the Louvre Museum, just so the idea of spreading it out for sustainability as well as for cultural engagement was, I think, a win. The hit comes from a depletion, a decreasing in the overall Olympic atmosphere, a
Mm.
sense of the games happening. Um, and it was just hard to find the place where people were, that kind of energized the whole city to that. And that's the first time I've experienced that. So that's why it was really hard the first week we were there, finding places to go where people were gathered that were interested in the Olympics and were open to pin trading. It was very hard to find a substantial number of people for that meeting those qualifications. It wasn't until the final week we were there and we went to the Parc des Nations where they had several, I think it was 18 or so country houses that were set up to promote tourism for their countries, that we really began to feel the old Olympic spirit because you had more countries all in one place. You had lots of different cultures. You had people who were more interested in pin trading because that's kind of where they had a pin trading Olympic souvenir place set up. And that was some of the most substantial daily gospel encounters we had. Um,
Wow.
and so it's a trade off. In the end, I think it's a good trade off. I think what each Olympic city is going to have to be more intentional about moving forward is how to make the most of the Olympic spirit during that season. Now, unfortunately, maybe that's not the right word. I don't know what it.
The way I kind of am hearing you say this, though, reminds me of like I'm a baseball guy, right?
Mhm.
And since they've taken away the late year playing each other so much, kind of taken away the rivalry that
Yep.
you feel like that you just don't feel the rivalry between teams near as much as you used to because we
Right.
don't play those teams as much as we used to. We're playing American League teams, which by and large then also makes the end of the season not near as exciting because it doesn't come down. You
Doesn't.
can't make the last minute runs and get yourself back into game if you're out by 6 or 7 games at the end of August. You could have a great September and be back in it because you
Right.
you played the teams ahead of you 2 or 3 times. Well, now you're lucky to play them once, and
Right.
so
Yeah.
you're just not going to be able to make that kind of momentum like you
Yeah.
used to because of the change. And you're you're gonna be playing tougher teams at the end of the season, not just your division. So,
Right. Yeah.
you're playing the Yankees and people like that, like we just
Yeah.
did. So, it kinda reminds me that with that spread out, you don't have that concentration.
It dilutes
So
it. Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah.
really does, and I don't know if, I mean, unfortunately, one of their stated goals for Paris was they were going to minimize large group gatherings. It was one of their goals, and
Why?
and that I don't know, unless it was just a concern for terrorism. You gotta remember one of the other concerns that comes up with spreading the venue out, it's one thing if you got a big park, you can pretty much secure that park because it's all in one. It may be one big area, but it's an area that's fenced off or walled off, and you're just controlling who's going in and out, right? Um, and literally Olympic parks like Sydney Park, I don't know, there probably 500,000 people in there at any given time, right?
Wow.
And but they're in there. They had to go through metal detectors. They had to have tickets. They had to pretty good vetting process to get in. That's much different than, in Paris, somebody could walk up to, they had wood fencing all around the park, around the Eiffel Tower. Um, but, we know how damaging, a truck full of fertilizer can be, as we experienced in the Oklahoma bombing. And so it increased the terrorist concern and the ability to secure the venues. I'll be honest with you. Other than there was one little, I don't even know what it was, but there was some kind of an attack on the train the first few days we were there. And it wasn't on the metro. There's metro that goes underground, and then there's a train system that comes into Paris largely. That's my understanding of the two differences. and there was some kind of, but by attack, I think at the end of the day, all I remembered it being, what little I heard about it was basically a cyber attack that shut it down or something.
Gotcha.
Um, and I was quite honestly, I was surprised there wasn't more episodes. And because just weeks before the game started, there was a terrorist attack at the base of the Eiffel Tower, and a guy got killed. It was a knife attack. And so Paris is always a target, and an even heightened target during the Olympic Games. Now, what the difference is, I think, when it comes to the Olympics, unfortunately, one of the lessons I think the Olympics learned from the 72 hostage situation where the Israeli athletes were kidnapped and killed is the world needs to work together to make the Olympics work. And so, because of that, I think there's more sharing of intel, there's more willingness to um, work together, um, far more than they would at any other time, because everybody loses at the Olympics, take a hit. And so that to me is the Olympics are always a risk. Um, I thought it was even more of a risk the way they had it set up in Paris, and the fact that it was Paris. But praise the Lord, nothing of any significance happened, and that's a huge praise. But to say that, yeah, they've changed a lot. I'll tell you a fun way things change. We the men's cycling event, road cycling event, came by our hotel, and so we just literally had to come outside our hotel, and we grabbed a bench. It was right there on the street, and we claimed the bench because we sat there for hours because thousands of people started coming to this little Paris neighborhood, right? And we had lots of opportunities to share. But here's one of the ways it changed. This is why I'm sharing the story. Our part of the location of our hotel was toward the end of the race. And so the men's group was spread out much more than the women's group. We went and saw the women's cycling event the next day, which instead of staying by our hotel, even though they came by there, we went over to the Louvre because we would see them come, and we'd see them twice, not just once. When it was the men's event, they just came by once. And but before even the last guy came through our area, there were Belgians watching the race on their phone and celebrating that their guy had won before the event was even over. And so again, that's something you would have never have happened before.
Well done.
And I mean, they were going crazy. There were about 10 of these guys, and they were losing it. And everybody's like, I guess Belgium won. And so that was something definitely that is new. And to that point, both in our room, the French television stations were showing a lot of Olympic events, but again, it was all the French stuff. But we just used VPNs and logged into our Peacock accounts from through our VPNs, and we're watching Team USA coverage in our rooms on our devices. Again, so we saw more events even on TV than we've ever seen before. A lot of times it was almost like we were in a blackout because we weren't going to the events. The internet wasn't, like in 2000, 2002, 2004, just beginning to get spun up. We'd have to wait till the next day till we saw a newspaper to know the medal count, and to know who did what when, let alone to hear any of what the hype is about the event, that everybody else is talking about. So, like with the opening ceremony and the absurdity that took place there with the Last Supper fiasco, we were hearing about that within an hour. And we turned on the opening ceremony right when that happened. We didn't even know what it was about until we started hearing and reading on social media about the outcry. And so those kinds of things have changed. Another one was in like in Sydney, it was paper maps to figure out how to get to the subway schedule line, and all that other stuff. Well, in Paris, they had different apps. They had an app for the metro. They had an app for tickets. They had an app for resale tickets. You just had to have the right app. And the metro app, Brandon and Tony were our metro guides. They they just pulled up that metro. They would put in where we were, where we needed to go, and it would even take you down the hallway between in the same subway stop between platforms to tell you turn left at this hallway. I mean, it was that precise. And so to have that kind of availability, it makes it simpler. But I tell you what it did, it took away from the cultural experience of trying to figure it out where you were, you know?
Exactly.
So,
Well, that's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome, buddy. So if they want to hear more, how can I do it?
Yep. Coming up, you can always go to beyondtherings.net. We have stories, pictures, videos. If you missed any of my daily video updates from Paris, they're there. All these Paris 24, 30, and 30 will be there. Of course, you can go to the Triple Play playlist and catch them there too. But in town on Sunday, September 29th, 3 p.m., Concord Church in South St. Louis County, we're hosting a celebration. And we're invite you to join us for dessert and drinks. And as the BTR ground team shares stories, pictures, pins, I shared in the previous one, we're gonna have the Paris pins that we got, but we're also gonna have my previous 10 Olympic pins there for on display. So you can take time looking at those and seeing some of those memorabilia from those Olympics. And we'll be sharing stories about our time in Paris. And then we will wrap up the night as we launch Italy 26 and Beyond the Rings, and we'll be taking an offering for that. Everything else is completely free, no registration required. We just ask you if you feel led to participate in the love offering that'll be taken to help kick off Italy 26.
Awesome. Well, just a correction. They can go to Triple Play, but they can look up. There's two playlists. One playlist has all of the Beyond the Rings that you've been doing on Saturdays,
Yep.
and the other one is a playlist of just the 30 and 30.
Oh,
So
cool.
they
Right.
can go to the 30 and 30 if they want to keep up with these and just go to that playlist. So excited for that. Make sure you guys can check it out, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.